Pissed at the list.
We're rolling, right, Brett?
I'm rolling.
Oh, boy. What is that? Horses?
Oh, shit.
Or a spaceship?
Sounds like space horses.
All I know is it's awesome production. Do you remember this album? Black Holes and Revelations?
Oh,
Muse?
yeah. I do.
So many hit songs. But this is Pissed at the List! And I'm pissed at the list! What is the list? Ask you, Brett. The best indie rock albums of the 21st century, ranked by cultural critic Stephen Hayden on Uprocks. Yeah, now we're going down the freeway.
Hell yeah.
Woo! But is this album on his list? Fuck no! These guys achieved a sound, if we can just start like almost like we're in the middle. Muse achieved a sound and they had their moment. Like they had many albums before this album.
Yeah.
But that were kind of like this album, but it's like they tighten the screws somehow. And this album is just like, whoa, every song's awesome. And probably was on a million soundtracks. You love this album, didn't you?
I do love this album, yeah. And I like the one before it too. And just even, I remember getting the instrumental version of, it was either this one or the album before. And even just the instrumental version is worth listening to. It's like so cool, everything they're doing on it. Yeah. I saw them live for the tour of this one and it blew my mind. It was like...
It's almost the closest thing, I'll probably regret saying that, but like they're like a Pink Floyd to me, like where the production is part of it too, like in the mix and whoever made their album, kudos to them. But this is about Pissed at the List. I invited Steven on the show the only way I know how, which was through the comments on Twitter. I don't know how else. I think he used to follow me so I could DM him, and for some reason he doesn't anymore because he probably knows how many of his list I'm pissed at. So that's his job, Brett. He works for Uprocks, which is, I think, known for lists in general, right? That's kind of the type of website they are, right? Mm-hmm. So he starts out this article. I don't want to do this. It's too hard. He puts in quotes. That's why I wanted to say when my boss asked me to write a column about the favorite indie rock albums of the 21st century, because it really is too hard. We're talking about almost 25 years. That's thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s. Okay, I want to respond to that, it being hard. First off, dude, it's your job. Come on, dude. That's your job. It seems like to most people reading that, they're like, this sounds like the most fun job in the world. We're podcasters, comedians. Like, we have a fun job. I'd never like, bitch, oh, my job. It's so hard. It's the improv part of my job that's so hard. It's like, what are you talking about? We don't have hard jobs. And like being a rock critic can't be, it's got to be on the hard job list and the hard job top 100, it doesn't make it. So anyway, I think we're all going, dude, that's your fucking cool job.
Yeah.
And I wish I was his boss, because if he had like hesitated, I'd go, you know what? I'm going to call it Matt Besser. He'll do it.
Yes.
He'll fucking jump on it.
It's also like someone has to make that list. So you're just declaring that you're not qualified, you know?
And it seems like from following him, he would think he's the most qualified. This is exactly what he writes about. So anyway, that's my first response to that. But then he's like, he has to define, as any critic with a list should do, what is indie? So to put it in short, because he goes back and forth of, well, it can't be just about if it's on a label or not, Brett. I mean, a major label.
This is where I need a definition myself, because this is where I get tripped
so
up.
he said, is it about being on a label or not? He decides it's not. And I got to agree with him there. That would just like cut off. And then you have to go look. You go, when did Jawbreaker go from Discord to whatever the fuck? So who wants to do that? We're talking about a sound of some kind. And he says, is it guitars? And that's what he lands on that it's something to do with guitars. And well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, so I'm just going to read it.
I mean, it can't be major label though, right? I always thought it just
can
off the
be
major
dude.
labels. Okay,
it can be. I mean, what was the Strokes on when it came out? I bet it was on a major label. It was probably an RCA or some fucking thing like that. I don't know. If you start going down that road, you're gonna be surprised too about how many you're like, oh, they were on a major label the whole time, or anyway, that doesn't matter to me. And as a buyer, and when it became about selling out, like Green Day and Jawbreaker, for instance, like I didn't care. I was like, more people will hear it. As a consumer, I didn't care. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about here. I'm just trying to find his thing. Does it mean music with guitars, or is it a more amorphous term that applies to music existing in a so-called underground of culture? Yes and yes. However, for the purposes of this column, I've decided to stick mainly with music with guitars definition. It makes this impossible job slightly less impossible by limiting the possibilities. I agree with that. I think you need to do that on a list. I think it's the image most people have whenever someone utters the words indie rock. I agree with that. But
I think it's something, but it's not rock, and it's not hard rock, and it's not metal, which is also defined by guitars. I feel like it's a indie rock. The way I think of it is almost a reaction against it. It's like minimal guitars in some way, or it's like a jangly guitars. It's not so aggressively guitar forward. It's something
it's
a
not,
little
you're
less.
not listening to the music based on your love of guitars, like Shellac, for instance. And it's like not what makes the sound of the band, that what it's known for. And I was going to address that in a minute, but let's talk about it now. Like he doesn't go, I'm not including metal.
Right.
I'm not including punk, because he really doesn't at all. I'm not including country. I'm not including alt country. I'm not including Americana. Like, I don't think he really included any of those genres. And he did every once in a while. And when we get to those, I'm going to go, dude, you shouldn't have included that, because now you're opening up the doors. I don't mean the band doors.
I do feel like there's a lot of indie artists that I can think of that experiment a lot without guitars, but I don't know, like orchestration and synths and all of that. So I don't know.
Yes, but well, that is mentioned kind of here. So
yeah.
However, there's one standard I think will come in handy as we commune over these 100 albums. I call it the is this it? Is this I can't
Strokes
find it now? Is this it, or hot fuss test? So the Killers. So he says basically the Strokes are indie rock and the Killers aren't. He says, I acknowledge this does not superficially make sense. The Strokes was on a major label, RCA.
Oh, there you go.
Hot Fuss was also on a major label, Island. So that they're both started on major labels.
Interesting.
The same kinds of people enjoy both LPs. They exist in adjacent lanes. But Is This It feels more like an indie rock record in terms of sound and ethos. Hot Fuss is more a regular rock record because that's what my gut tells me. He lost me at this point. I just don't agree with that. And what you were saying earlier, like the Killers do have more synth and produced that kind of sound.
Right.
And they did, back to maybe what I feel. It used to be called college rock. And it was because college stations would play this stuff first, whereas the mainstream rock stations wouldn't. So,
right. Alternative rock, right?
But the bands that were on there, they weren't like, I don't want to be big. They wanted to be big. They would love to be on the big rock stations, but they broke on college rock and they sounded different, or at least the ones I liked. I think people liked and thought, like, Pavement, something's different about this. But Pavement weren't like, we don't want to be big. But punk actually, or heavy metal actually, They kind of do make decisions of, we know we can only be so big with the sound and lyrics and albums we're putting out. So we don't actually want to.
Yeah, we want to be in our niche. Yeah.
So that's maybe why I don't put them in indie music, and that's why I do put them in what I see as college rock, or like, we're doing our own sound, but sure, I'd love to have everyone buy my record. Bon Iver. So let's get to his list. So he's defined his list, and I just want to start. I usually like to go to the top of the list, because you can't get really pissed until you understand what the top of the list is.
Okay, so
but
number one.
I want to go. But I'm sorry. I want to go to. Do you have it?
Yeah.
Can you share with us and start with 100? Actually, the soft pack.
Okay. Let's see.
So, like I said, I like to usually start with number one, because you can't. Oh, there it is. That's okay. We saw it. Wilco. But let's see what he writes here in the Postal Service, because he says something in 100 and in 99 that I think we need to read here. Okay. Lists like this tend to be heavy on canonical. That's a hard word. Canonical. You say the word.
Canonical.
I said it right. What is a canonical record after all, if not a record expressly designed to be included on lists like this? Yes, I agree, Steven. This list has plenty of canonical indie rock albums, but does not have all of them. It should.
It should.
I don't understand that. You say it yourself by definition.
Yeah, it's in such confusing territory here.
So he says right here, and this is important because these are two outrageous albums to leave off. Arcade Fire's Funeral is not on this list. This is when a lot of people had a heart attack. Sufjan Stevens' Illinois is not on this list. Both those records, like them or not, were huge when they came out. They were talked about. There was something different about them. The sound was different. The writing was different on both those albums. That it was like critics loved it. People who loved music loved it. And they made a mark beyond the year that they came out in. Arcade Fire in particular. That album he leaves off. And then later, can you scroll down to 99?
He leaves off Arcade Fire?
Yes. He just said it.
That's crazy. And St. Vincent, too, like her early stuff.
Okay, just to head off the inevitable comment from a reply guy with a blue check. What's that mean, a blue check?
I mean, that's the Twitter thing.
No, I know, but what's that mean that people with blue... I don't have a blue check, but...
Yeah, that's good. Well, since Elon took it over, having a blue check means you endorse everything that's happened, basically.
Okay, and a bad attitude. I guess I have that. I didn't exclude Arcade Fire because they're canceled. That's why I thought he did it. My feelings on the band and on Funeral especially have always been mixed for musical reasons. Okay. And he says down here, Transcendence walk hand in hand with wanton embarrassment in Arcade Fire camp long before Win Butler became the subject. Okay. So he's basically saying, I'm not taking him off the list because Win Butler is a creep like Chris D'Elia.
Right.
I almost wish he had, Brett. I would almost understand if he said, I'm not including, he also doesn't have Sun Kill Moon on this list, which I think is silly, unless you're canceling him. And it's maybe fair if that's how you're going to set your parameters to go.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to shine a light on these assholes that are fucking Chris D'Elia creeps going,
totally
strays. But I could see that and go, that's why they're not on the list. I'm just not going to shine a light on them. And you even leave fucking number 3 on the list blank because you're like, it's too culturally big for me just to ignore, but I'm not going to shine a light on that asshole. I would have accepted that more, but he says that's not the reason. So, and then 99 is the Postal Service, which is Ben's band from Death Cab for Cutie. And he also leaves Death Cab for Cutie off the list. And I don't think they have as definitive one album as those other two, but they're another guitar band that was huge in the early aughts.
Yeah, of course.
You can't, in 100 bands, leave them off the list without a good reason. He kind of just goes like, well, it's my gut. And I feel, Brett, now go down to number one. If it is, everyone has a chip on their shoulder when they start reading the list. They go into it and they're like, oh, they better have weaker thans on this list. They better have weaker thans on this list. And you got that chip on your shoulder. You're like, I'm going to be so pissed if they don't have weaker thans on the list. He didn't have weaker thans on the list. But I'm going to admit, excuse me, that weaker thans, they're not the biggest band ever. I get it. They're not as big as Wilco here. I get it. So I'm not an idiot and I'm not a fool. And if I were a critic and this were my job, I would not put weaker thans number one. I probably wouldn't put them in the top 10 because it's not the Matt Besser's favorite bands list,
Right, exactly.
Brett.
Right.
I would probably put them in the top 25, and I would try to come up with a good argument just because they are my favorite band in these last 24 years. But I wouldn't be a fool. So now let's scroll. Let's stay. So Wilco Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. You remember when this came out? It was a huge album, and it was every critic. If there was the top critically acclaimed albums, this might be my number one. Critics loved this album. I was okay on this album. I thought it was pretty good. I know how big it was. I'm more of a Sunvolt guy when I'm on the end of the dock fishing, Brett. But another thing is, this is, I'm pretty sure, one of the albums people go, this is alt country.
Right.
This is the start of alt country, or this defines alt country.
Right. Americana a little bit.
Yeah, and you might say, well, it was so big it crossed over. It is number one on the alt country of the 2000s list, but
yeah.
Okay, I'll give you that it crossed over. It's that big. But number one, no. He already said when he was making his parameters, is this it? Yes, this is it. The Strokes is number one. You made it your defining way. Number two, Destroyer Kaput. Keep going. Purple Mountains, number three. White Stripes, number four. There it is at number five. You made it
White
the way.
Stripes, too. I mean,
yes, I would put them 1 and 2. It'd be my personal. But before I say that, Brett, come on. He made it part of his definition.
Exactly.
And if you read the whole list, he doesn't talk about Purple Mountains, Destroyer, and Wilco. He uses fucking the Strokes as a measuring stick.
Right.
And I loved this album when it came out. I wore the shit out of this album. It's one of these albums I played so much, like Nevermind, that I don't listen to anymore because I OD'd on it. Because I OD'd on it. It's like the Beatles. I just listened to it so much.
Yeah.
But anyway, and it's not my favorite. Again, if it was in my favorites, I don't know if it makes my top 10 of the aughts. But if I'm a critic and just looking at what happened and how it affected culture, and another thing I would put on the list are bands that created a sound where you went, oh, that's something's different about this band and this sound they're achieving. And then a year later, everyone copying it.
Yeah, exactly.
Strokes
and
White Stripes. Isn't that right, Black Keys? They influenced so many bands to try to copy them. So let's scroll down to his 2 and 3. I like this Purple Mountains. I get the genius what's his name? David Berman, right?
I have to remind myself.
But do I think of the aughts, this is one of the albums that just like define music? I don't know, man. Again, this is an album that critics love, and I'd maybe put it in the top, maybe number 3 and critically acclaimed. But more than the two above, White Stripes and The Strokes, that's just silly. And then this Destroyer Kaput album, I'm okay with it, but it wouldn't make my top 100. And certainly, again, this seems like your favorite, dude. Come on, Steven. How do you rationalize it? And you don't, in your write-up of it, give me a good rationalization for why this deserves to be number 2, dude. It's your number 2. That can't be the way you write a list. That has to be in your parameters too. I'm so disappointed. So disappointed. But let's keep scrolling. And I have my own list. And
this is where I know.
Elizabeth, I'm coming
I know
for you.
You really got pissed.
Come on. Steven, what is up with you and Father John Misty? Go out on a date already.